Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Talent Finders would like to welcome co founders Ken and Craig Chalifour from Chalifour Consulting Group and Design Group. So, welcome, Ken and Craig.
Thank you. Welcome. Glad to
Glad
be
to
here,
be
Karen.
here.
So, firstly, I'd like to congratulate you on all your achievements. Can you share with us how your entrepreneurial journey started? So, I know both of you have different journey. So maybe one of you wants to just take the lead and then follow from that.
Yeah, I'll jump in first. This is Craig. If you guys don't know, Ken is my father. So I was very blessed. Ken founded the Chalifour Design Group in 1995, right around the time I came into this world. So I was very blessed to be able to speak and learn in the entrepreneurial spirit at a very young age. It was dinner table talk in our household. And it got me the bug pretty early on and started a whole bunch of different ventures as a child, as ink cartridge businesses, and of course the cliche lemonade stands and things like that. And then I was blessed with an opportunity early on in college to work for a mentor of mine who ended up really taking a backseat in the business and gave me the reins of the company at a young age, and was able to learn a lot of what I've put into action today, and gave me the bug even more. And then realized that it was time to take the jump and start my own thing, and reached out to Ken and said, "Hey, let's start a consulting business." And here we are today. So, I think it's a whole bunch of different life journey that came into play and culminated with where we are today.
Well, that's amazing. And then, Ken, for you, what was that transition like for you? Or were you doing something before?
I've always been involved in sales, Karen, and marketing, and I found it very difficult early on in my professional career to work for somebody because I tend to be somewhat outspoken and always
Yes.
felt like there was a better way to do things.
Yeah.
And I tend to voice that opinion at inopportune times and sometimes found myself unemployed because of it. So I determined early on, my wife and I, that it's time for me to start a business, and I didn't know what that business would be. Started out as a sign company, morphed over the years into a web development company, digital marketing firm. I just loved working for myself. That entrepreneurial journey, it gave me the freedom and flexibility to be involved in everything that my kids were involved in, to coach, and still build a business. And then eventually, several years ago, 4 years ago, Craig came to me and said, "Hey, Dad, that business consulting business that we've always talked about doing? Let's do it." And it has been
Amazing.
wildly successful since then.
That's amazing. And it's so great because so often you hear of family members who work together but then end up having, conflict. So it's amazing to hear that, your story and how you guys are able to work together.
I don't think there's two family members in this world that work better together than Craig and I.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I think we'll get into it a little bit later, Karen, too. But partnerships are difficult, so there's always struggle, and there's balance, and finding that can certainly be difficult. But leveraging each other's strengths is really where the balance comes into place.
Yeah, absolutely. So, can you just give us some background on the consulting group and what inspired and motivated you to start your consulting and design firm? Because obviously you're doing multiple things. So, what was the inspiration or motivation to do that?
Sure. I think with the consulting company, Ken working in the design group, his audience is small businesses, largely in that business as well. And me working at my previous company and in my past was largely in larger small businesses, but still small businesses. And there's a big gap in the marketplace as far as what's offered to small businesses. Obviously, there's numerous consulting companies in this world, and there's the big ones. There's Bain and Deloitte and BCG and Accenture and all those big consulting companies, and it's unaffordable and ultimately unattainable by small businesses. And the model that those big companies adopt, is oftentimes interim help or smart hired hand versus actually implementing change. And so I think the way that the consulting company stemmed is really small businesses are often very lost. You have a skill, or you're good at something, or you stumbled into some success, Next thing you're doing $1 million in revenue or more, and you're not that great at running a business. You were just a really good plumber or really good at marketing or really good at something. And, going back and building the foundation so that you're able to either grow the company to, more millions or buy back your time, right? Because if you're $1 million company and you're struggling with organizational efficiency, then you're running around wearing a million hats. So, it's either growing it more or, getting back your time so you're not working 1 million hours a week. That solution just is not incredibly readily available to small businesses. So, our market is small businesses, typically under $20 million in annual revenue. We do have some outliers on that, but there's a big need for, helping them get to whatever their objective is. And sometimes, like I said, sometimes it's more time and getting that life balance. And other times it's, wanting to really scale the company. So I think that's really how this came to be, is filling a need that isn't readily available and really partnering with as many of our customers as we can.
That's amazing. So, Ken, what would you say some of your biggest lessons and learnings or biggest get lessons within your career? And I'm sure you probably had multiple, but is there one particular lesson that really stands out for you?
Well, it's an interesting question, Ken, because I ran and operated the Chalifour Design Group, like Craig said, since 1995, and then coming into 2017, 18, when we started the consulting company, the design group did fairly well, and I guess I didn't realize the lesson with the advent of Craig and his expertise. Craig is, and I'm not going crazy here about Craig, but his vision is really, really strong. So I operated my design group in a way that somewhat put out fires on a regular basis. And those fires were somewhat regulated, meaning I wasn't running around like a crazy man all the time, but I didn't have a lot of systems and processes in place. So I think one of the biggest lessons I learned in business, which is what I carry over into the consulting group, is a small business needs to have parameters. It needs to have systems, processes, essentially a standard operating procedure for how it runs its business, so that there's no ambiguity. And that's probably the biggest lesson that I learned in starting the consulting company, is looking back and saying, geez, if I had implemented these systems and processes, where would that design company have been? So now that we're working with clients, Craig and I developed a process called Business Positioning System, which clearly identifies and outlines a strategic plan wrought with systems and processes. So the organizational flow of a business, to me, is you have to treat that business like it's an entity, not just a free-flowing, money-making, client-generating machine. So I would
Yes.
say that that's probably one of the biggest lessons that I've learned in business.
Yeah, that's amazing. Because, like you say as well, it's so easy to just get caught up in generating sales and whatever, but you have to treat it as an overall project or an overall business. So Craig, prior to you starting your consulting business, and I know you did touch on this earlier, you worked in the insurance and automobile industry. So if you could explain what that means for the audience, because obviously not everyone will know. And can you share with us more about this, and how do you believe this helped you in your own venture?
Yeah, absolutely. So going back a little bit, I was able to intern with this company. Actually, it's called Dealer Income Development, Lambert and Associates now. And I was able to intern 2 weeks after the internship. I was offered a job for when I graduated, and started as an account executive there, which essentially building a territory from scratch in New England. What we did was pretty niche. So we worked with large automotive dealers across the Northeast, and what we did for them was really, truthfully, full service consulting. So we trained their entire personnel on how to operate more efficiently. Everything from service writers in the auto shop to upsell and how to present repair orders to the customer and how to be consultative in nature, all the way to teaching the GM how to read, a financial statement and make operational efficiency within the business. The backside to that is that we also were a middleman and provided the insurance products to the finance insurance office of the dealership, which actually is where we made our commissions and our revenue for the business. The last part of the business was that we took the seeds of the insurance money and set up reinsurance trusts to allow the dealer principals to retain the unused premium within the insurance policy. So really, really niche industry for what we operated in, and honestly knew nothing about it until I kind of stumbled into it.
Mm.
And starting as an account executive was really interesting, and building a book from scratch because, I'd walk into a massive car dealership group like Herb Chambers or something like that. And at 22 years old, 23 years old, I'd walk in, go to the front desk and say, "Hey, is Herb Chambers in his office?" Right. And, the front desk lady would kind of laugh and say, "Who are you?" So, I think the modern day, a little bit door-to-door sales, really was a great way to cut my teeth and give me, confidence in getting denied, getting turned down, but also when you did win and when you were able to secure a meeting and then close somebody that, that has pretty big recognition in the area. So I think from the sales side, that was really big. More than that, like I said, as I kind of came in, the owner of the agency took a little bit of a back seat, and I was able to take on a lot of the, operational and management side of the business, including growing the team from, 3 employees to 9 employees, tripling revenue, and expanding our customer base tenfold. So it was a great experience to be able to kind of be on the ground floor of a really, really well-run company and, build out a team and get that experience while also really kind of immersing myself in, not to sound shrewd, but a gray hair industry where I was really trying to, break down some barriers of being so young and speaking to these older women and gentlemen that weren't used to seeing such a young face. So I think on a lot of different levels, it prepared me for, everything that we're doing today. And the owner of that company was really well prepared for growth, but had yet to implement it. So a lot of the systems and processes were kind of initially developed and just needed to be kind of brought to the finish line. So, really learning out how businesses are supposed to operate, has a lot to be said for my position with that company.
Amazing. So, Ken, you have close to 30 years of business experience. So, can you share with us more about your journey and your expertise, obviously, having worked in many industries? And when you embarked on your own business, what would you say has given you an advantage in a very competitive industry? And can you give us any examples?
Yeah. So, Craig kind of alluded to this earlier in this last question that you asked him. A lot of people don't recognize in a company that sales is the backbone. It is the heart and soul of any company. I don't care if you're a one-person law firm. As a lawyer of a one-person law firm, you're a salesperson first. Until
Mm.
that agreement is signed, then you become a lawyer. So, in starting my own business many years ago, the only talent, I did not go to college. I'm not highly educated from an academic standpoint. So I had to learn through the school of hard knocks. And
Yeah.
the only talent that I had was sales. I could talk to people and I could read people and I could understand how they think and operated and negotiating and those types of things. So as my business started to grow, I clearly was exposed to many different industries and was able to act as somewhat of a chameleon. And, I don't want that to sound sleazy or slimy in terms of not being who I was, but reading people was an important part of how I could help them be successful. So, in sales, you really want to sell the outcome, not the product, right? You want to make sure that you're selling how they're going to benefit from whatever product or service that you're presenting to them rather than giving the pros and cons of what you have. So, in trying to figure out what were some of these pain points that clients had, and how can I help those pain points go away? And so, as the years went on, my sales skills improved dramatically, but my ability to work in many different industries improved simply because I had more and more and more exposure in each of these industries. So, that culminated today into the ability to work with any niche that we work with. And I'll give you some examples. So, we can throw on a suit and walk into a boardroom with highly successful upper level C-suite staff members of a, 10, 20, 30, $50 million company. and be able to interact. We can also throw on a pair of jeans, a t-shirt, and go meet with a contractor,
Mm,
right? So there's a dichotomy there of different industries that we're able to morph into, and that's where the chameleon effect comes in, is
mm,
that we have done a lot of different things and we're not pigeonholed. Like Craig said, the Bains and the BCGs of the world, they have a business model that the client has to fit into. Although
mm.
we have some of those, we try to be as fluid as possible so that when we're working with a client, Craig often says that when we work with a client, we get in the client's boat, right? And we find the biggest hole. We fill that hole. We find the next biggest hole. We fill that hole. Once all the holes are filled, now we take the boat and we make it bigger and stronger so that it can go out to sea further, right? So in getting in somebody's boat, we need to make sure that we're familiar with their industry. And I think sales has been a really big, Craig will say that he's a better salesperson than me, and I will contend that that's not true. So it's a really cool dynamic between the two of us because we're constantly working to improve our ability to work with a client. And sales doesn't end with a contract, right? Sales ends with our client aging out of our services.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Craig, you've been very successful in developing sales and growth, which obviously, Ken, you've just touched upon, strategies for business. So, what would you describe as being the largest challenge to implementing these strategies?
I think this is a couple different things. There's a I don't know if it's famous, but there's a line that I really like to use, which I stole from a guy named John Spence. He's got a great book, a couple books, but Awesomely Simple is a great book. I was able to hear him speak at an intimate conference a few years ago, and it's ambiguity breeds mediocrity. Right. And so if we're ambiguous as business owners, as managers, if we're ambiguous in what we are saying or communicating, we're going to get
Mm,
mediocre behavior. So that is true in what we are doing with our clients and how we express the change that needs to occur. But it's also true to teach that to our customers because people is the biggest bottleneck in any business. Hiring, retention, and ultimately, elevation of people. And that phrase is all too true with people. So I think people is a constant struggle for us internally, but also for implementing change with our customers. Oftentimes that's a huge issue, whether you're a plumbing company trying to hire your first employee or you're a, $20 million company looking to hire your next VP. It's incredibly expensive and incredibly difficult to train. And then even when you do get someone who's qualified on paper, it still might not work out. The second thing I think is another little phrase is I like to say adoption over perfection. I learned at dealer and development at a previous company that it was really hard to go into a mom and pop business and implement change, right? You
mm,
can't teach an old dog new tricks type of thing.
yeah.
And what happens is businesses become lifestyle businesses, right? You make a couple $100,000 a year, you're not working an outrageous amount, you're able to do different things and you're happy. And then, they think they want to grow. But sometimes changing systems and processes because they've been so comfortable doing it for 10, 20, 30 years that it becomes really challenging. So something, we had to learn is adoption over perfection. So if I create or have or develop the best software system, technology process, but it's incredibly complex and you need a PhD in X, Y, and Z to use it, then it's never going to actually get used in the business. So we'd rather start on the smaller side, get adoption on something, right? So that they're doing something related to the ultimate goal. Then we can advance that system, process, or technology later once it's been adopted. So adoption over perfection has been a huge lever driver in implementing change. And it's a little bit difficult, sometimes to wrap your head around because there might be a better solution, but we need something to work, right? And then once we have something working, we can start to refine it and make it better. I think those are some of the biggest challenges are people and making sure that, like Ken said, that we're implementing the right solution for the specific company, but also for the specific people. Everybody's different. Everybody learns different. Everybody does business differently. There's not really one perfect right solution. And being able to, learn who our clients are, learn what their company does, and make sure that we're implementing something that will work right now is certainly a strength of ours, and something that has been both a challenge, but also a success.
Yeah, absolutely. So, being entrepreneurs and having probably gone through many growing pains yourselves, what are some of the biggest lessons you've both learned? So, I know Ken, you touched on some things earlier, but I don't know if you've got anything you would like to elaborate on.
I would say the biggest lesson that I've learned is to be prepared. And I know that sounds like a Boy Scout thing, but it's really true.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's really true. And like I said earlier, I alluded to, Craig has a vision that, that I've often tell my clients, there's two things I can't teach you. I can't
Mm,
teach you talent.
mm,
Talent is just really something that's inbred in somebody
mm.
from birth, I think. And
Yeah.
I can't teach somebody how to have vision. Vision is something that, the Elon Musks of the world, they have this vision and they surround themselves with people that can make it happen. So Craig
Mm,
has a lot of vision. And in working with somebody who has a lot of vision, being prepared is really, really important, because that vision has to translate into milestones and goals, right? So you have to take that vision and say, all right, I want to make X amount of clients in the next, year. I want to expand into this many employees. I want to make this much money. I want to, whatever the goals or the milestones are great and they're awesome, and everybody should have those goals. But you need to take those goals and then work backwards and then create the plan to move forward with those goals. And the only way you're going to do that is by preparing and
mm,
by strategizing. So I would say that has been my biggest lesson, is to create the goal, start with the goal, work backwards. What are the steps necessary to make that goal happen? And then
mm,
start moving forward with the milestones of that strategic plan. And being prepared is really important. So again, a milestone versus a goal, to me, a very big difference, right? A milestone is, your business is operating here, and when it reaches this milestone, these are the steps and the action that need to take place in order to manage the growth so that your business can grow with the clientele that's coming in. And establishing that is really important, because when you reach that milestone, if you haven't created a trigger plan,
mm.
now you're overwhelmed with what's going on. So I would say that would be my answer, is to be prepared.
Yes, absolutely. So, being entrepreneurs, there are so many entrepreneurs out there who have amazing and incredible ideas. But one of the biggest challenges most entrepreneurs face is financing and accounting. So, what would you say some of the biggest mistakes you see entrepreneurs make when it comes to money management? And why do you think so many entrepreneurs struggle to find a rhythm to achieve this critical outcome?
I'll jump in, Karen. I just want to jump back on that last question a little bit,
Sure.
related to lessons and whatnot. A few things come to mind. People is a big thing, within our own organization and others. It's a real challenge, and learning how to delegate, understanding that even if someone can do the job 60, 70, 80% as good as you can,
Mm,
worth outsourcing so that you can use your time for more valuable things. That directly ties into time and understanding what your time is worth. I think as business owners, you start a business, you don't have much money, you're kind of clawing to make sure that things are progressing forward. So you develop certain habits during that time, which is maybe doing things yourself, maybe cleaning your house, doing certain things. And then as you start to become more successful, it's important to understand what your time is worth and what's most worth outsourcing, creating a list of what you don't like to do. Early on, I learned that, I'm somewhat, obsessive compulsive about certain things, and cleaning my house was a big factor, and it was playing into a lot of things, and finally made the decision to hire somebody to clean my house, which, really, when you look at it, it's really not that expensive. So,
mm,
but the amount of headspace that it cleared up for me and the amount of time that it cleared up for me was astronomical.
mm,
And then along that same line is, I like to say, as an owner operator in a business, the only way to make more money is to create more time. And the only way to create more time is to become more organized and more efficient, right? So organization for small businesses is a huge thing, and plugging into those systems and processes really play into that. And the only way that we've able to grow to where we are is through organization, because for a while the people in our organization weren't coming along the way they were supposed to. So Ken and I had to take on a lot more than expected The only reason we didn't let anything drop was because of the systems, processes, and organization we had in place. And then the last thing on that is the partners thing, right? Understanding the skills and the strengths of partners is really critical. Kind of goes back to delegating, not that one of us is delegating to the other, but delegating each other and understanding that, hey, I'm not that good at that, or hey, I don't like doing that. You do, I shouldn't be doing it anymore, or vice versa. So, kind of back to the people delegating and identifying the roles in the company. So that's kind of my take on that. As far as the financial thing, just to recap, you had asked about the financial and accounting of small businesses and how that's a weakness for many businesses, or at least an obstacle. And it absolutely is. As management consultants, we have to play some role or have some discussion related to finances, right? We can't be totally in the dark. We have fractional CFO services. However, even just in our normal relationships, we need some understanding of the finances to be able to drive their business forward and be able to make educated decisions on what needs to happen. And ultimately, I learned at my previous company that the best business operators were typically CPAs, or at least had accounting degrees from college, because once you understood the numbers, everything else kind of just falls into place. So what we do with our clients is we make sure that we implement very, very early on, if they don't have something, a financial software such as QuickBooks or Sage or something like that, very, very early on. We teach them how to use it if they don't know how to use it. If they are using it, we do a kind of a deep dive into it to make sure that it is set up and optimized. Again, adoption over perfection. So we just want to make sure that things are in there and getting categorized and that we're able to pull reports. And then we've created a really simple month-end reporting outline for companies that include something we call the simple profit and loss, and then a month-end financial agenda. And essentially what it teaches business owners to do is pull their reports at month end from their financial software, and then plug into the month-end agenda and the simple profit and loss, and be able to have a really, really easy way to look at their business financials and business growth, extracting the key data that's really important. Looking at a financial statement, looking at a profit and loss is really noisy. There's a lot there. It's complicated to look at. I don't even really like looking at them. But if we extract what matters, and teach them how to look at this in 20 minutes and get a really good understanding and be organized in how they're reporting, it does allow them to have a mindset shift and actually enjoy looking at the finances, because you're able to see the growth and where you're headed, versus getting stuck on all the minutia of finances. So I think going back to adoption over perfection, right? Simplifying it, getting someone to look at something in an easier way, so that later we can, start to make those decisions and delve a little deeper.
So, can you share with the audience how managing growth within a business is critical to scalability?
I'll take that, and then I'm going to hand it off to Craig. So, everybody hears that there's a specific period of time where a business doesn't succeed, 3 to 5 years, 2 to 4 years, where they go out of business. And that's not typically because they're not good at what they do. It's typically because they don't know how to manage the growth. So take a mechanic or a contractor. Let's take a mechanic, somebody that is working under the hood of a car dealership, and it's a big, huge car dealership, and they can't stand the bureaucracy and the pricing structure. So they decide they're going to take their expertise and start a new business. Well, they know how to turn a wrench. They know how to fix a car, but they don't know how to manage a business. So they fix their first 4, 5, 6 cars. Word of mouth gets out. They hire another mechanic. Now they've got 2 mechanics fixing cars. Word gets out. Their reputation starts to grow leaps and bounds. Well, now all of a sudden they've got all of this business. They don't know how to handle that business because the guy knows how to turn a wrench, doesn't know how to run a business.
Yeah.
His scheduling starts to go downhill. His reputation starts to go downhill. And then he closes the doors because he couldn't manage the business. So managing growth is absolutely critical. And, one of the things that Craig does in our business, is, we each have different roles, and he does most, if not all of the, manages the client facing part. And his ability to help and teach somebody to manage the business is absolutely critical, because like Craig said, adoption over perfection, and they need to be on board with that. So I'm going to hand it off to Craig, because I'm sure he's got a lot more insight on that.
Well, just really quickly, we live in a really cool world now that we didn't live in 20, 30 years ago, which is technology, right? There's a full service software for, thousands for almost every industry, so we're able to plug into a lot of technology that allows businesses to run really efficiently. And combine 8 different processes into, one piece of technology and really simplify it. And again, what that does, that creates more time, which allows them to be more efficient and more organized, right? So, I think that businesses do get lost. It's easy to have small business burnout. It's easy to get lost in the minutia of a business, working the old cliche, working in the business versus on the business. And the number one priority is sales, like Ken said. You need customers through the doors. Far too many business owners go get business cards and get a website and hire people and get an office, and they don't even have a customer yet, right? First thing is get a customer. And then once you understand how to acquire your customers, Ken's right. They typically come. If you're doing something well and you're operating in a good industry, customers typically aren't going to be a huge issue. And at that point, right, it comes to managing and scaling, which is the systems, technology, and people. There's 3 Ps to success, right? You have your people, product, and process. And product can easily be replaced with service. So, you need good people, you need a good process to operate your business, and you need to be doing something of value or selling something of value to your customers. And the process is managing that growth.
Amazing. So, what would you say some of your biggest career highlights have been? And maybe there's multiple for both of you, but what really stands out?
I think for me, working at Dealer Income Development, working my way up from an intern to vice president of sales and operations was a big accomplishment, and growing that business to how I did, and hiring the people and building the infrastructure and getting it to where it needed to be was number one, and realizing that was available. And then, number two would be, taking the leap and starting this business. And number three, I guess, would be getting it to where it is today. Despite the success we've had, I have a crippling insecurity about the business, and constantly thinking that, we're behind, or we're not where we need to be, or I'm personally behind or not where I need to be. And I think that taking a minute and looking at, how far we've come and what we're projecting for 2024 and beyond is pretty remarkable.
Amazing. And for you, Ken?
Well, I would echo some of what Craig just said. I would say that some of the biggest career highlights, my number one is that I own and operate a very successful business consulting firm with my son. And I think that speaks volumes to Craig and I's ability to work together and to
Amazing.
collaborate. Yeah. And I don't want to make light of that because, Craig is definitely the vision behind our company, but the ability for us to be successful is awesome. So that's one of my highlights. The other highlight is that, I think, and Craig, you can correct me on this one, but I think we have business in 48 states and 4 countries.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a
It
massive
is amazing.
achievement. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's really amazing. And then personally, an achievement personally is that, Craig alluded to a phrase earlier, the gray hair community. I'm certainly in that gray hair community. And as you start to get older, you start to become a little bit more exposed to the opportunities. So I've served on the board of directors of 2 companies. One of them was the FBI here in the United States, called InfraGard, and we worked with counterintelligence, and that was really cool. And the trustee for a senior living facility that we built here. So, having the oversight in those 2 worlds was really, really kind of a highlight to my professional career, that, people saw my success and said, hey, we want to tap into that as part of this. So those would be my 3.
Amazing. So for both of you, you both bring incredible knowledge and skill sets to the business. You both bring a lot of different strengths to the business. So do you think that this is why you have managed to achieve such a high level of success in your own business? I don't know who wants to take that.
Oh, go ahead, Ken.
I'll just be brief about this, but I think, yeah, we bring an incredible amount of knowledge and skill to the business. Absolutely. And I think a lot of the skill that we bring to the business is innate. It's part of us. It's who we are. Knowledge is, Craig and I are, mostly Craig, but constantly sharing, Instagram posts and blog posts. Hey, you really should read this. This is a really cool thing that we can incorporate. Or so the knowledge is just constantly evolving and always learning. Or I will read something in a newspaper or magazine, and I'll share it with Craig about, small business, blah, 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 or small business funding or something like that. So although we bring a lot to the table, we're constantly learning more because we need to stay in with the times, right? What's new? What are emerging markets? What is
Mm.
the new trends? Things like that. So I think the strength that we both bring is our ability and our desire. That's the other important part, is our desire to learn more and continue to grow in knowledge. We don't want to get stale or stagnant.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think that's great. The always be learning is a key phrase, but it's more than just news articles and blog posts and things like that. I think, working in a myriad of different industries and working with a lot of different customers, we're able to implement things that, another company's doing, or learn from something that we implement with another company that we've never done before, and then take that and utilize it with someone else. So I think retention of knowledge and being able to use it into the future is really important, and really just the evolution of the business and services that we're offering. I think a lot of the services that we're offering today, have evolved from something that was very different when we first started, because we learned how our clients were best reacting, or best utilizing or implementing the information, and then
Mm.
being able to adjust and adapt from there so that it's accepted and implemented as best as possible. Because it's a big thing, right? We can, again, like I said, we can develop the best thing in the world, but it has to be implemented. Otherwise, we're just a talking head on a
Yeah,
screen.
exactly. It's application,
Yeah, and there's
not,
no value to it, right? So, and
yeah.
I think that's what a lot of big consulting companies do wrong. And I think, if you look on social media or anywhere and you see all the satirical meme posts about consulting companies that just generate PowerPoints, and I think that's really where the difference factor is rolling up your sleeves and making sure that we're implementing true change, and changing our clients' condition.
Absolutely. So business partnerships are often compared to marriages, only more difficult. So how do you manage the interaction and roles between the two of you, particularly with the family dynamic? I know you have touched on this earlier, but maybe you
I'll
want to just elaborate.
yeah, I'll jump in. So we work with a lot of companies, right? And a lot of companies have partners. And
Mm,
Ken and I, individually, separately, individually and together, have mediated partner conflicts, have helped separate businesses, have helped bring a union back together. And one of the first things I say to new businesses that want a partner is, I'm like,
mm,
are you sure? Because it really, really, really is a difficult endeavor. And communication's a big factor in that. For Ken and I specifically, I think there's a couple things that come to mind. The first is, in some aspects of the business, right, you have to separate family. You have
yeah.
to understand that we're family, but right now we're business partners talking about business.
Mm,
And being able to separate that, being able to separate the emotional aspect a little bit sometimes is a challenge, but ultimately what allows, you to have success in that. And then the second thing is, understanding each other's skills, right? A partnership is never going to be 50-50. Sometimes it's going to be, I'm doing 80% and Ken's doing 20%. And sometimes Ken's going to be doing 90% and I'm going to be doing 10%. And
yeah.
in the end, you hope, or expect that it, kind of equals 50-50. But sometimes, there's going to be weaknesses or laps in one of the partners. And that directly ties into, understanding and leveraging each other's strengths. Ken, I love sales. I consider myself pretty good at it, and where I got my teeth cut. But Ken's been doing it for 30 years and has had great success with it. And, so in January, we, transitioned Ken to taking over all sales. I don't do any sales anymore. And that was a huge weight lift off of me, which is great, but it also allowed me to take on more clients, which allowed Ken to sell more business. And that transition was a huge shift in our culture and understanding roles and responsibilities, and being able to dictate what that looks like. And truthfully, we're still learning what other key strengths each other has, and where we can leverage them, and how that can drive our business forward. And I think when we stop learning that, our business will decline. So, always learning where we can thrive, and where we can place each other in the business is the key there. And then just having some empathy and having some understanding that, it is a business relationship, but business is hard, right? So having some empathy for each other, and what that looks like, and what each other's calendars look like, and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So that leads me to the final question. So, what are the three key pieces of advice you would give to other entrepreneurs, and what legacy would you like to leave, or how would you like to be remembered? I'm sure that's a lot,
Um,
but
Well, it is and it isn't. I'll start on this one, Craig. It is a lot, but in the world that Craig and I live in this sense. Oh, I let me back up to that last question about the partnership thing. I did have a couple of things to add to that, if you don't mind, Karen.
Sure.
Um, Partnerships are definitely not easy, and especially if they're family related. And let's make no mistake about it, Craig and I have had some knockdown, screaming fights. But
Yeah.
two things that we always remember is one is that this business goes away, we're still father and son. We still love each
Yes.
other, and that's the most important thing. And two, that the arguments and the fights that we would have on occasion, not all the time, very rare,
Mm,
but would be a growth factor,
mm,
right? Because one of us is like, we should go in this direction, the other one's not. So there's a compromise going on. And like Craig said, there's always got to be a respect for each other's talents. So,
mm,
that's important to understand. So back to the three things. One of them is to provide value. One of
mm,
the things that I tell my clients all the time is I am less interested in taking your check to the bank and making a deposit. I am
mm.
more interested in making sure that we provide value. And one of the things that Craig and I are really, really, we live and die by our reviews. And if anybody looks at our reviews, every one of them is 5 stars. So
Yes.
provide value to your clients. Make sure that that is number one. Make sure they don't see dollar signs in your eyes. Make sure that you're providing them with something that is going to improve their condition, right? Second one would be to prepare. Always prepare. Be
Mm,
prepared. Plan, strategize, set some goals, and make sure that, like I said earlier, make sure that you have milestones in place that can be triggered, or once they're triggered, then there's a new process that gets implemented in order to continue growing and to expand the business. And honestly, I would say the third one, this might be a little contrarian, but is to have fun. If you're starting your own business, or if you are running your own business, you're doing it for a reason. You're doing it because you want to make more money, you want to create more time, whatever it is, spend more time with your family, have some fun with it. Don't let your business create physical ailments or challenges and keep you awake at night. Figure
yes.
out a way to mitigate those things so that you are having fun with your business. So those are my three.
Yeah,
Amazing.
I'm just gonna very, very quickly. I like all of those. I'm just gonna piggyback, an actionable element to that, is simple, right? It has to be simple. Don't overcomplicate things. When you're talking about adding value, write down on a sticky note what you do for your customers and keep it on your desktop. Eventually that'll evolve into some cool system and process that allows your business to grow better. But keep it simple at first. Create an admin morning. You're constantly running around doing different things for your business. Create a window every Wednesday morning for 2 hours from 6 to 8 a.m. when the phones aren't ringing. I'm going to focus on my business. It's a really easy, actionable step to put into place that really does, simplify what you're doing and keep it not as complicated as it needs to be. And then the fun element is a key factor, but there is a lot of sacrifice in starting a business on the early phases, and it takes some time to be able to really enjoy what you're doing. I think the key actionable step from having fun is reward yourself. So easy to get lost in what you're doing and just be grinding and staying up at night and doing whatever. But if you're able to take a minute, hey, I just closed my first client. I'm not saying go buy a Ferrari, but take your wife out to dinner, go spend a little bit of money and celebrate the success, right? When you hit the first 100,000 or the million or whatever, take the company out to dinner and enjoy the success. And that, it's hard to do sometimes. You get lost in it. So I think those are kind of some of the more actionable elements of what Ken was saying that piggyback it directly.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. So, if people would like to get in contact with you, what are the best platforms to do so? Whatever details you want to give.
Yeah, I think the best way to reach us would be, learn a little bit more, check out our website, chalifourconsulting.com. It's CHALIFOUR consulting.com. And then we are on social media at Chalifour Consulting, on all platforms. And then feel free to look up Ken or I on LinkedIn, reach out to us directly. Craig Chalifour, Ken Chalifour on LinkedIn, pretty big presence on there. I think that would be kind of the best way to get in touch. We do have a blog on our website as well. Feel free to join our news list, which sends out weekly tips for business owners. We keep it really, really simple. Some things will apply, some things won't, but that's kind of the point of it all.
Yes. Well, thanks so much, guys, for joining us today. And hopefully, we can have you back in the future to see where you are in your entrepreneurial journey and your vision for the company. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen. It was a pleasure.
Excellent. Thank you. Have a great day.